Come on. Okay, I got that, and now we're just waiting over here. Okay. That, I think, is working. We got that, and this, these, and I think we're all good. All right. Let's see. It is sunny outside, which in the winter is not great in Wisconsin. When it's bright and sunny and a blue sky, that usually means it's real cold. Currently, it is 7 degrees Fahrenheit. For those of the rest of you who use real temperatures, well, I mean, you know, the rest of the world. That's like negative 14. So just FYI. But it's sunny, I guess. That's just. I think it's like the greenhouse effect. If it's cloudy, then it's generally a bit warmer because the heat stays in. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. As I've mentioned before, let's see. We've got Rhode Island. We've got Guten Morgen from Minnesota. We've got Canada. We've got Cincinnati, Ohio. Hamburg, Las Vegas, Long Island, Montreal, Toledo, Philadelphia. We've got. I just got a care package from Philadelphia yesterday. My wife's sister stayed with us over Thanksgiving, and as a thank you, she sent us a little package of Philadelphia stuff, like cookies and coffee and things like that are local to her, and a mug. So that's very nice. Good afternoon from Hungary, Melbourne, Florida, not the one in Australia. We've got Chicago. We've got Florida, another Chicago. Well, it's like the Matrix there. Cordoba, Argentina. There we go. Kentucky, Belgium, Plymouth, UK, Dublin, Ireland, Newmarket, Ontario. Bright and sunny means cold because there's no clouds protecting us. Bring on the clouds in the 40s. See, that's what Jay Tick, he knows. He's a scientist. I'm currently kitbashing a castigator into a hellblaster weapon. Fun. That sounds cool. We've got Italy. We've got British Columbia. We've got North Carolina. Truro, England, Switzerland, Dublin, Southern England, Denmark, Milton Keynes, France, Finland, New York, somewhat sunny Scotland. We've got, let's see here, Dallas, Fort Worth, Southern Thailand, actually. We've got first time catching it live, hi from the UK. Hello, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That's always a lot of fun to say. Hope you got tasty cakes. Did not, actually. Got butter cookies, though. They were quite lovely. Hello from Holland. We've got St. Louis, Missouri reporting in. Foggy Central Texas. We've got hi from Ohio. You rock. No, you rock. Hi from Washington. Got something in Cyrillic that I can't understand. I apologize for that. Hello from Finland. Got another Philadelphia. Switzerland. Foley, Minnesota, Moscow. Hello from cold Iowa. Got something going on with my eye today. Good morning from Surabaya, Indonesia. Painting the last 6 Blood Reaver dudes from a batch of 30 Reavers. Blood for the Blood God, indeed. Berlin, Norway, Detroit, Hungary, New Haven. Morning from Enid, Oklahoma. Boston here. Symbio Joe says, hey, don't tell Joe Rogan I'm interrupting listening to his podcast to listen to you. Well, next time I see Joe, I won't mention it, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Hello from Northern Virginia. We've got the glorious nation of Wales. Morning from LA. Good morning from Montcalm, New Brunswick, I think is what NB is. Schaumburg, Illinois, which is the home of, currently, of... for quite some time, I think. Adepticon, coming up in late March. Adepticon registration went live last weekend, I think it was. And so, yeah, that was there was a lot of people who got a lot of classes and things like that, and you know, and got into tournaments and stuff like that. And they went quickly, so there was also a lot of people who didn't, but that's kind of the way these things work. Today I'm working on cleaning up a Balewind Vortex, and good lord, the tornado part has seams like you wouldn't believe. Thankfully, I have sandpaper and Vallejo plastic putty. Yeah, there's certain pieces of GW terrain that don't have tons and gaps and work really, really well, and there's other ones that do not fit that bill. So, yeah, I know what you mean. The, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the Phidian Archway, maybe? That's a monstrous piece of warped garbage. I don't like it. I built it. Still got lots of warps in it. I'm going to have to try to hide it with, I don't know, shrubs, vines. I'm not sure. But, yeah. Hi from Northeast Michigan. My husband is assembling my Sisters of Battle while I work on crafting my dream army list. A little bit of list hammer. Sounds good. Hello from Poland. Hi from cold, snowy Hoth, just west of Edmonton, Alberta. Sad greetings from Stockholm, topic related. I just found out that Max Mini EU are shutting down at the end of December. Great bits makers, real shame. Well, that's unfortunate. Yeah, they're that's where this, nope, not that, that's where this image came from, is from Max Mini. That's terrible that they're shutting down. I would think that they've been doing well. Well, that's one that's not going to be on the list, I guess, after a while. What else have we got here? Rolling Metals, Illinois. We've got Peoria, Illinois. Morning from a less smoky Sydney this week. Hey, I'm glad that you're not on fire. I heard that there's a lot of that going around over there. We get it in California, usually in the fall-ish, late summer. So, yeah, you guys are early summer there still. Or, yeah, how about that? Oakland, Illinois. Morning to you, Uncle Adam. Good morning to you, Gino. Oregon, Wisconsin. I don't know if I've ever been there. Hide the gaps with warpstone. Yeah, I could do that. Green stuff was what they mean. Yeah, I thought about sticking a bunch of green stuff in there and filling that all in, and I got kind of angry with it, and I was like, nope, just going to leave it there and try to cover it with something later once it's done painted. So it's primed, but I haven't been painting any terrain lately much. Yeah, Phidian Archway, needed to use green stuff to assemble it, or a bunch of glue, and then be happy with the graps. J Solo Arts says, Uncle Adam, you're not teaching at Adepticon this year. I was looking forward to taking your YouTube marketing class. No, I'm not. So, I was kind of on the fence a little bit about teaching this year. It was just kind of, I sort of wanted to take a year off. And then the decision kind of got made for me, actually, because they sent out the stuff to the people who had taught in the past, and they said, hey, you've got this deadline and whatnot and everything like that. And it was back in mid-September, and I was sick as a dog. I had, like, the worst cold that I can remember. But it was like the 11th or 12th, I think, maybe, of September when I was like, yeah, no, I still got till the 20th. Okay, that's great. And then an email got sent out saying, sorry, everybody, but all the slots are filled. So, basically, the teaching this year at Adepticon was so sought after by teachers to teach that all the spots were taken way earlier than the deadline, which I don't believe has ever happened before. So, I just basically, like I said, decision. I was kind of on the fence about, well, maybe we'll take a year off or whatever. But yeah, basically I didn't jump quick enough, and all the spots were taken. So that was fine. I'm going to spend the time doing some other stuff. I may take a class or two, although, like I said, a lot of the ones that I'm looking at right now are also kind of sold out, which is fine. But I may. I don't know. I definitely want to try to do a video again this year, kind of like the one I did several years ago, where I talked to a bunch of different pro painters and kind of asked the same kind of questions of all of them. And I want to do some stuff like that this year. So being able to have my schedule a little bit more open is actually kind of nice. I'd also like to try to play something this year, like not a tournament, but something. I'd like to do some demos or something, play some demos or do something, but we'll figure it out. Let's see here. What else have we got? Hope everyone has a good morning from San Antonio, Texas. Greetings from Italy. We got Taco Lover 24 painting up a bunch of orc boys. I've got a good friend, I think, that's probably finishing up an orc kill team, painting up that this weekend. Good morning. Headed out to deliver a Christmas commission to some painted D&D minis. Nice. Finished building my Fire Raptor this week, and now I am trying to build all of the MDF ships I bought this month. That's a lot of MDF is it's you can buy it pretty quickly, and it can take a good amount of time to put together and all that kind of stuff. Timothy Boyd says, good morning from Woodstock, Illinois, cleaning my hobby space and debating if I should work on my wife's Stormcast or my guard kill team. Whichever one you like better, I guess. I don't know. I mean, because it's for your wife, there could be some, maybe work on the wife stuff, and then she'll be happy, and then that's, it's a nice thing that you do for someone. There's that too. Digitari says, good morning from Las Vegas. Sorry that you're not going to be at the LVO this year. Yeah, it's just the stuff with my mom is still kind of up in the air, so I just figure like late January is still not necessarily going to be a great time. Here's a quick mom update. She is leaving the rehab nursing home thing tomorrow. But luckily, she is going to a respite thing for a while. Basically, the insurance is like, yeah, you can't be there anymore. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry, is what the insurance company says, because there's a long list of things I could say that I won't. But luckily, she's not going home tomorrow because her apartment is not designed for a wheelchair. It's just not. So luckily, we found out on Friday that she's going to be getting into this other place for a while, which is cheaper. But, she'll be there at least and hopefully be able to recuperate more. Friday was the 1 month anniversary since she messed up her leg real bad. For those of you who haven't heard, my mom fell and broke her femur. And so, anyway, my long story short is that she's going to be, after the show, I have to go and help her get some stuff ready for her transfer to this other place tomorrow. And because of this and a couple other things, honestly, also, I got a hotel room at the Paris for LVO, and then they emailed me and said, oh, there's a problem with your credit card. I'm like, well, that's weird, because I can see that you charged like the first night on there. And they're like, oh, yeah, we did, but there's some sort of problem. So I called them, and then we took care of it. And then about 2 days later, they're like, okay, well, you didn't call us, so we're going to have to cancel your thing. And they gave me my money back, which is nice, but I called and was on a phone for about an hour trying to get someone to figure out what the heck was going on, and they never did. And then they said they'd call me back in 24 hours, and it was several weeks ago. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm not going to Vegas this year for a couple of different reasons. So that's the long and the short of the story there. Sorry. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Took the plunge and got Marvel Crisis Protocol, and I'm painting those figs. The game is a lot of fun. Well, that's good to hear. Barbu says, don't want to be intrusive, but is your mom getting better? I kind of touched on that. Barbu, you might be kind of psychic. It's hard to say. I mean, she's healing some, but she's, 74, and it's a femur, and so the doctor was like, it'll take 6 to 8 weeks, and at this point we're at 4, so that's kind of where we're at. VJ Morph says, make sure you ask Sam if models with scenic bases really do need rainbows. He'll love it. All right, well, I might be having lunch with him this week. We were going to do it last week, but then everything got all squirrely with work and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll try to remember that. Mark Maxey says the more teachers, 1 to 2 classes helps diversify the hobby style and brings in new talent. Lots of new teachers last year. Comic style from Mike and skin tones from Yeji. Yeji? I'm not sure I know that name. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a bad idea to also try to break that up a little bit. I've kicked around the idea sometimes of trying to take the content of those classes that I do at Adepticon and try to make them digital in some fashion. It would be a lot of work, so I'd have to figure out something to make it worthwhile and go that direction. But I've kicked around the idea, so we will see. Let me see here. We've got Man of Action says, too many teachers oversold themselves and took up too many of the slots, and other people should have been on talking about Adepticon again. I think that, there are some teachers that just want to teach as much as possible, and if they're popular enough, they have no problem filling the slots. So I don't know. It's sometimes teachers do want to take a break as well. I think so. There's that too. Sundered Psyche says, "Whoop, caught a live show for the first time in months." Well, we're glad to have you here. Michael asks, "What's your opinion on the lack kill team events at Adepticon?" I had not seen that. Like there are none? That doesn't make any sense. Or is it just there's not very many? I guess I haven't checked. I'll take a look at that. Let's see here. Brian Walsh says, "Love your channel, lad." Oh, it's been a long time since it's been called a lad. I appreciate it. It's been very useful for getting back into the hobby. Hope your mom recovers well. We'll be steering my two brothers your way as they start on their fledgling armies. Well, it's good to hear. Absolutely. What else have we got here? Aaron Smith says, "Is the Facebook group still active? I requested to get in a few weeks back. My request is still waiting." It is. I have not let anybody in for a long time. Yeah, I don't... I'm still trying to figure that out for the new year, exactly what's going on with the group. But yeah, it's not you. It's just I haven't let anybody in for a long time. I have a tendency sometimes to let people in all at once. At least I did back around July, I think it was. So yeah, Facebook in general is working my last nerve in more than 5 ways. So yeah. Let me see here. Good morning, Uncle Adam. Good luck with your mom. We just lost mine 3 weeks ago. So cherish the time spent. Well, I appreciate it, and I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Do you apply Citadel color sprays directly on the plastic, or use a designated primer first? I mean, I've never really used the Citadel sprays that I can think of. I don't think I have. Well, no, that's not true. I mean, I have used the stuff that they send, the contrast stuff. There's the sprays for the contrast. Dawn, Stone, and Warp? No. Wraithbone and Dawn... No, anyway, there's like a light gray and a light tan. Anyway, and those are basically primers and kind of a base for the contrast paints. So I have used those. As far as the other colors, I personally think that they are primers as well. So if you spray the Mephiston red spray, you don't have to spray something underneath it, unless you want to. Like if you wanted to do like a two-tone sort of a thing, or a Zenithal highlight, and you wanted to start with like a black or a brown and then spray the red over it, you could do that if you wanted to get that fade. But if you just wanted to start with the red, I'm pretty sure you can that stuff should be considered to be primer. But generally, I work with either a regular rattle can primer or I work with airbrush primer. That's generally where I start. So. Mr. Hossie says, "I got Marvel Crisis 2 maybe 3 weeks now. I haven't played, but have been having a ton of fun painting." You know, one of the reasons that I haven't picked up, and I'm not super interested myself personally in the Marvel game, is because I don't know that I would enjoy painting superheroes. Superheroes are generally, like comic books are generally very clean. You know, you have a very clean, like everyone's... I mean, obviously in the movies, like after a battle, Iron Man's all beat up, you know, and dirty, and so is whatever, and Cap, I guess. So if I really wanted to, I guess I could paint them to look like they're in a battle at the time. But just seeing all of the paint jobs that have come out of it, like when they first announced it at Gen Con and all that kind of stuff, and I just looked at it, and it just immediately was like, I don't like painting that clean or like that, really. So, I don't know. So that's one of the reasons, honestly. You know... It's just the way it works. So I'm trying to figure that out, but I don't really see myself. I'm right now. I got plenty of games is also a thing too. So, what else have we got here? Hey, Eeny Meenies, how you doing? Hi, hey Adam. Hope you and your mom are doing well. Things are things. Things are not doing too bad. So, Digitari says, "My go-to manufacturers for conversion bits are Anvil Industry and Mad Robot Miniatures. Bits of War and Cromlech are good as well." This is a good point. So I want to do a Friday episode coming up soon, talking about conversion bits, companies that make them and that kind of stuff. Because it's kind of hard to find sometimes. There are certain ones you can find very easily on Google, and there's a lot of them out there that are good, but you can't really find them as well because maybe they're not as good at making websites or, you know, search engine optimization and all that other weird stuff, because they're very good at making bits and they're not good at websites, which totally makes sense. So basically, if you've got a company that you like to buy bits from, and I don't mean like, say, Games Workshop bits where you get them cut off the sprue and then some company sells them on eBay. I mean, they're generally resin or something like that, and they're made custom. Maybe they're shoulder pads, maybe they're heads, maybe they're torsos, maybe they're extra guns, whatever, all kinds of stuff like that. Put it in the chat, and just list the name. Like we were talking there about Anvil Industries, and we talked a little bit about Max Mini already, about how they evidently are going to be shutting down, which is a bummer. If you want to get some Max Mini stuff, you should buy it soon. Their heads are really great. The Max Mini makes great heads. But yeah, if you've got some companies that you like to buy bits from, and for whatever reason, a ton of them seem to be European, and mostly Poland, honestly. I don't know if there's I don't know how resin gets made, but if it's mined, all the resin mines must be in Poland. But yeah, so just start posting some of that stuff in the chat, and then I'll be able to go by through the chat later on, and so will you, but I'll be able to go through and look at it and kind of come up with a decent list for that episode when I do it. So I appreciate that. But yeah, the conversion bits, like this, again, in the title card, these are some Max Mini conversion bits. They're called Biohazard Heads, and you would use these heads and replace them on your normal models. Like if you were, let's say you wanted to do some cool guardsmen, but you wanted them to use those heads instead because they were on some sort of acid world or something like that. Conversions like that always make your models look cooler, in my opinion. And I'm going to be doing some pretty heavy, for me, there'll be heavy conversions. There are lots of people out there who do really heavy conversions where you can barely identify the model underneath anymore after they're done, because they've cut the arms and repositioned them and resculpted a bunch of stuff and green stuff and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I do have some plans to do some kit bashing / conversions of some models for Zone Raiders and for Star Breach, which are two games that I'll probably be talking a bit more about in the future. Doomscythe Studios says, I'm painting them MCU style or alternate costumes like black-suited Spider-Man. That's kind of a cool thing. I think that's smart. Shapeways is decent sometimes, says a letdown of state. Yeah, Shapeways is I've bought stuff from them like icons for shoulder pads and things like that. I don't know if I've bought any specific. Well, I did buy a cool custom head for an Imperial Knight if you want to make it like Nurgle. It's just got this one eye in the middle and then almost looks like a gas mask tank on just one side, not on both. And it's pretty cool looking. But yeah, so you can find some of those too. Mr. Kavoshi says, my buddy got 2 of the Sisters of Battle boxes, and he's giving me the Codex cards and spare bits for a couple of bucks plus shipping. Plan on using DFG Valkyr models as my own DFG. I'm not familiar with DFG. As my own SOB, Sisters of Battle for Kill Team. Let's see here. John Ashley Smith said, if I had the funds, I'd be getting Adeptus Titanicus. No one to play with, though. See, that's sometimes the issue, is that there's times when you're like, yeah, I could buy that, but I don't know anybody to play it with. Now, with something like Adeptus Titanicus, if you can get the original base box, I guess, you could then do both sides. And then at least you could be like, hey, let's play, and you use those guys and I'll use these guys. But a lot of games in miniatures, it's you buy the game, but you build your own army, which is why skirmish games, and I've talked about this a bunch of times, skirmish games are great because it's way easier and cheaper for you to build and paint 2 forces so that you can teach people the game. If it's a situation of hey, I want to teach you how to play 40k, but I only have the one army, that's not going to work out real well. So, let me see here. We've got a bits manufacturer from a company called Trolls Under the Bridge. See, that's not one I've heard of. Victoria Miniatures, they're good. Yeah, I've seen them before. Let me see. Went hard mode on my Astra Militarum army. All the heads are from Mad Robot Miniatures with some Forge World and Anvil bits thrown in for the Scions and the Guard, respectively. Nice. Red Dog Miniatures. I've not heard of them either. See, this is the benefit. Also, I might have to sneeze, so I apologize in advance. Let's see here. Hey, Uncle Adam, thanks for all your content. Is the Painting Showcase Facebook page still active? I submitted to join. Yes, again, I mentioned it. I haven't let anybody in for a while. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it. Pig Iron Miniatures makes a pile of different heads and conversion bits. Cool looking stuff. Check them out. Yeah, it's interesting. Pig iron miniatures, I found them years and years ago. And it's interesting too because the majority of the stuff, unless they've changed recently, the majority, almost everything I've ever bought from them is metal as opposed to resin. Normally, with bits and conversions kind of makers, the stuff's done in resin. Sometimes in metal. Almost never is it done in like the normal plastic that we normally see in our kits from Games Workshop and weird games and stuff like that. When weird games, I mean Malifaux. Not just weird. That's the name of the company, is Weird Games. It's spelled with a Y. Anyway, so those types of conversions I think are interesting. But they like everything pretty much from pig iron is very hand sculpted looking. Like I don't think they've gotten into computer stuff at all on that jazz, and so it's got a definite. Everyone's kind of chunky looking, you know what I mean? Which is sort of cool if you're into that. But the heads are very cool, I think, too, yeah. J Tick says, I've been doing the Marvel game. It's been fun, very action-packed, but honestly boring to paint. Yeah, you mean that's maybe an issue, too, that I could see a little bit. Just, yeah. Matt Fat says, Kill Team has saved my hobby interest. Cool. Let's see here. 12 Neef, it's same here to some degree. 12 Neef, I'm going to paint up Dreadfane and Beastgrave. Post up at the friendly local game store and see who bites. I'll invite players to play Beastgrave. People get interested when the others are playing games. Yeah, I mean, Beastgrave, basically anything Underworlds, is good for teaching to some degree because the forces are small enough that it works out real well that way. So yeah, definitely. Let's see here. What else have we got? Official release for White Dwarf is 3rd Friday, so if you don't have a sub, that's when to look. That must be going back to something else. I am trying to scroll back and figure out what that was in reference to. Sorry. Let's see here. Bought my daughter the Star Wars Legion core set for Hanukkah. Getting ready to paint using YouTube tutorials. I've got to 3D print a bunch of terrain. Imperial miniatures looks really nice for STLs. Yeah, I've got STLs from Imperial Miniatures and some stuff as well, some buildings from them that I've got one that I've had a friend print for me, and then I've got some that I was gonna print myself, and then was just like, I'm just gonna buy them because he also sells printed stuff, and so it was a situation where I was just like, I'll just send him the money and have him print the stuff. So I did that, but yeah, they're good stuff. I'm working. I'm texturing some of the buildings because they're all kind of Tatooine style buildings right now that I've got in the board that I'm kind of setting up and building. So yeah, I'm trying to texture everything so it's a little bit more sandy. I don't know. Eeny Meeny says, happy I delayed going to the gym to catch you. Have you heard / demoed the Disney Villainous game? Just curious. I've neither heard nor demoed a Disney Villainous game. Is it a miniatures game? Disney Villainous. I haven't heard about it. No. I'll have to take a look for it. Let me see here. Lumpy Dog says, Trolls Under the Bridge. This is what Upper Peninsula Michigan folks call Lower Peninsula Michigan people. That's not very nice. Let me see here. The Victoria Mini stuff is Australian, and they look like they would be awesome if you were doing an IG army. Yeah, they've got some other stuff as well, but they do focus predominantly on the Guard from what I've looked at last time, yeah. Let me see here. Man of Action says, I stand by Victoria Minis. They're both awesome bits and great relationship with you as a customer. Have I bought anything from them? I don't remember. I know I've looked at their website extensively, and I almost bought... Maybe I bought something from them at Adepticon, like a couple years back, but I don't know if I've bought anything off their website. Lumpy Dog says, in process of painting my first mini. New hobby for stress relief and to keep me from watching all of the doom and gloom on the TV news. Yeah. Thanks for all the great info. Cheers. Yes, that's exactly what, in my opinion, the hobby is for. So, yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Love the channel. Thanks glad I could finally make it to a shoe. You probably meant show, but you spelled it shoe, which I enjoy. Been working on a few Chaos starters for Slaves of Darkness hype. Yeah, the new Slaves of Darkness stuff is very cool. Because I've got like, I don't know, a dozen or 14 or something like that of regular Slaves of Darkness painted up for my Chaos Soup 1,000-point Age of Sigmar army. And I like them, but these new guys are really more dynamically posed by a bit, and they're kind of cool. And they remind me a lot more, like their shields remind me more of the shields off of the, those horse dudes. Varangard. There you go. And, yeah, so I've thought about it, but I haven't played Age of Sigmar, honestly, in a while, so there's definitely that. Let me see. Dave says, discovered bolt action at Valhalla. Found a group a few months after. Now it's more fun to work on my army and a 3D printer for Christmas, and I'll work on terrain. Yeah, bolt action's a bunch of fun. If you were playing it at Valhalla, I'm sure you were playing with Ruben. So Ruben's a great guy to teach you that stuff. Yeah, I personally prefer Conflict 47 because it's got like werewolves and laser tanks in it, and I need werewolves and laser tanks in my historical games. But it's a good rule set, I do think so. Wub says, anyone got the Sector Imperialis battle boards? I've heard that the movement trays and dice box are required. What tips for painting them have you got? I bought the Necromunda Dark Uprising, I think it's called. I bought that box, which has a bunch of that Sector. I don't know if that's the same stuff you're talking about, or if the Sector Imperialis is something else. Oh, wait, no. The Sector Imperialis battle boards. You mean like the Realm of battle boards? The big 2 foot by 2 foots? I do have those as well. I bought those for battle reports because just 2 of them will make a great kill team map, because it'll be 24 by 48, which is pretty close to 22 by 30. 22 by 30 or 22 by 36? I think it's 22 by 30. Anyway, it'll be just slightly larger and it'll be fine. I've primed 3 of them. I only meant to prime 2 of them, but then I realized that one of them that I primed, when I looked at it, was kind of warped. So I was like, well, that's not cool. So I primed another one. But I haven't painted them yet. They are currently sitting in the basement, though. As far as painting on anything like that, especially with primer, if you can find it, I would highly suggest to try to find the Krylon camouflage line of paints and just grab the black. Just get the black camouflage Krylon spray paint, because that stuff sticks to plastic like crazy, like I've said for years and years and years, and it's very ultra matte, so you can paint over it very nicely. It's got a nice tooth to hold onto the paint, and so it's a great base for especially a board that you're going to be moving terrain around on and moving figures around on. If the primer that you spray on that board doesn't stick like crazy to it, it will probably flake off over years of use, and you will be sad. So that's why I always suggest that stuff, because that stuff's got fusion technology, which means it sticks to plastic super crazy well. So that's my suggestion, is start with that and then paint with normal acrylics and stuff like that over it. Sprays are not a bad idea. Like when I do it, I'm gonna be doing a lot of airbrush to start, and then dry brushing and stuff after that. But yeah. But the terrain stuff for that Necromunda box is awesome looking, but I haven't got any chance to build it yet. Clonehead says, did you finish cleaning your basement? Oh god, no. It's been slow going. Catherine says, thank you so much for your channel, Uncle Adam. It's helped me get back into the hobby. On a related topic of conversations, do you think that selling unpainted conversions could be a viable side gig? Like on eBay? Yes, I do believe that. I know because I've bought one. There was a guy who, and I wish I knew who it was now, because I would try to go back and get that person to do some more work for me. They built like a Chaos, I don't know if they built they're building like a Chaos Lord, and they had they had really good green stuff skills. This model had basically I couldn't tell if they were supposed to be strips of flesh that were nailed to his armor, or if it was supposed to be almost like purity seals, but they were just nailed there. It's hard to tell if it's supposed to be skin or if it's supposed to be something else. I suppose depending on how you paint it is kind of going to, show whether it's one way or the other. But yeah, so it's definitely something you could do, because then that way, like, you can do the conversion and then sell it, and then people who want to paint but aren't very good at converting can then decide, hey, that's cool, and then paint it. You know what I mean? The way they want to. Or they can buy it and then they could pay somebody else to paint it. You know, because there are people who are good at painting and bad at conversions, and people who are good at conversions and bad at painting. So, and there are also certainly people who are good at both, but it's a little bit more rare. So. Oh yeah. Mr. Kavashi says, I enjoy Dreamforge games as a third-party company. They made their own knights around the same time as GW released theirs. The Valkyr and the Eisenkern are fantastic pseudo sci-fi. So that's where the Valkyr came from. Yeah, I've got a set somewhere in the basement of Eisenkern, I believe, which I should look for, because I mean I know basically where they are. But there are some conversion bits in there that I could be using on that project when I go forward with that. That'd be very cool. John Ashley Smith says, sadly not going to reach my goal of 100 minis built and painted this year, 60 plus 3 pieces of terrain, and 3 model kits, unrelated to gaming. Well, I mean, sometimes you make a goal, but you don't always hit it, and it's not the end of the world. If you work towards the goal, you know, that's still progress. 60, if 60's more than last year, then cool. And if it's not, well, you know, sometimes you have to look at the quality of the minis. Maybe you painted only 60 this year, and last year you painted more, but maybe these are better looking than last year's. So you've got to always take that into consideration as well. Giggling George, that's a fun name, says, I see Car Wars is on Kickstarter. Yes, it is. I haven't decided if I'm pulling the trigger or not yet. And it's not that I don't like Car Wars. I do. I love Car Wars. And I've played the beta of this new version of Car Wars when I went to FNORDCon in Austin back in April. And I think the game's cool. There's a bit of rose-colored glasses that I seem to be wearing that makes me kind of wish for some of the old things, though, to come back. But I think this new game will be more interesting to new people. So that's fun. But there's also a part of me that's tired of Kickstarter in general. So I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe I'll just wait till it comes out at retail and then I'll just buy it, as opposed to sending them $120 or whatever now, and then in a year actually getting a thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. There's still time, but yeah, I might go check that out at some point. So, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I've been trying to cut back on Kickstarters quite a bit if I can. I think I do have one coming sometime in the beginning of 2020, but it's all terrain, and it's already all built and painted, so that's also a benefit. I got on that. That's, I think, the last Kickstarter I did was the Monster Fight Club Kickstarter with the trees, the super cool trees that they do and all that stuff. Yeah, that's coming eventually. Let me see here. What else have we got? Doomside Studios says, I'm sitting on a ton of bits because I have been hoarding them since the 80s. If I do conversions, people will buy that painted too. I mean, you can give it a try. Like, I know back in the day when Sam first started, you know, he was doing commissions and things like that, he would also paint not armies, he would paint usually HQs on spec. So this is something you might want to give a try to. When a new codex comes out, let's say, you know, Blood Angels codex came out, then Sam would go and buy like a captain, or like he'd figure out, like he would like look around online a bunch and try to find out like what's the new hotness, like when Slam Captains became popular or whatever. And then, although I think he had stopped doing this by the time the Slam Captains had come out, or whatever they're called. And so he would find out, oh, okay, well, the new hotness for this particular army is for, you know, a captain with a jump pack and a plasma pistol. Like, that's what everybody wants. So then he would build that and do a cool base and all that kind of stuff, and then paint it all up, and then he would put it up on eBay for like $80 starting, you know, bid or whatever, and then see what would go. And sometimes it would go well, and sometimes it would go meh. And, you know, but it's something where you can get your money and maybe a touch of your time back. But for people who want to get into commission painting, it's a good place to start because it helps you to build relationships, because you might find somebody who buys your Slam Captain, but then comes back to you and is like, look, I need to get this and this done, and I'm interested if you do other stuff as well, and then you can kind of, go forward from there. So, like, people who are interested in getting into commission painting, you have to understand that you're going to probably start off painting. You can do stuff like this where you have you have an idea and you decide, I'll put it out there on spec and see on eBay if people want it. But there's also a lot of, probably, if you're starting out in commission painting, you're talking to friends who've got Gloomhaven and want the models painted. And that can be a big deal, and you have to work on price, or maybe they'll be like, well, I'm a mechanic, and so I can fix that thing with your car if you do this, and you can barter, and there's all kinds of different things. But, commission painting is tough because everyone wants you to paint their army, and almost nobody wants to paint their army. And generally, commission painters don't want to paint their army. Commission painters want to do fun, cool, headquarters type HQ leader units and things like that. But yeah, so it's always a struggle. Like, everyone comes to the commission painter and says, "Look, I got this 2,500 point, Dark Eldar force, and I want you to paint them all for as cheap as possible." And then usually the commission painter is like, I don't want to do that. Sorry. But if you're a commission painter and you can do that and you can make it work, you'll always have business. That's kind of the way it works. So, yeah. Christopher Brett Sherman says, but everything is pre-painted. Gaslands might be better. Not sure what you're talking about. Because if you're talking about Kickstarter, I'm pretty sure those aren't pre-painted. Unless something changed since April. I don't think that those are pre-painted. Unless you're talking about something else altogether. Let me see what else we got here. Legionnaire says the Kickstarter burnout is real. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big Sexy asks, have you played the new Star Wars Legion skirmish rules, 500 points? I have not. Reason being, well, a couple of reasons. Number one, I haven't played anything in a while because I've been very busy with the mom stuff and whatnot and everything like that. Secondly is, I don't know. I guess I'd have to give it a try, but to me, 500 point is not skirmish. You know what I mean? Like, when they were like, oh, we're releasing skirmish rules, I was like thinking kill team. I'm like, sweet, I'll be able to bring like Darth Vader and like Boba Fett and like 4 stormtroopers and maybe a couple of death troopers or something like that. And that would be my entire force. And instead, they just went from 800 points to 500 points, and they tweaked some rules here and there. And so it's slightly smaller battles. And I'm like, nah, that's great, but it's not skirmish. Not in my mind. When I think of skirmish, I think of like generally no more than 12 to 15 models max per side. Yeah, and this is not that. So that's why I haven't pulled the trigger on playing it. That, and also just haven't had the time, unfortunately. VJ Morph says, got some new shelving for my garage/hobby space this week. Feels so much cleaner now. Maybe I can get back to painting my narwhals, which are draining my will to live. Yeah, shelves are important. I just actually picked up last week. I picked up 2 more plastic shelvy things from my local Menards hardware store place, and they're going to go in the basement as well. So the problem is now is I have to like find the right. I know where I want to put it, but there's junk there, and by junk I do mean stuff that came with the house. Some old antique kind of washing tub on wheels thing, and I need to get it away. I don't know. It's one of those things. I'm like, I could just put it on Craigslist and probably sell it real quick, except that it's really cold outside, and because you can take it outside and you shoot it in the driveway and stuff like that, so they don't know what the inside of your house looks like or whatever. So yeah, I kind of wish I had done that earlier in the year, but we'll figure it out. Allkinked? I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing your name properly. I did one Kickstarter, got hosed, so I gave up then and there. Consider myself lucky. I mean, Kickstarters can be great. The problem is that, like most things, they're kind of easy to some degree to buy. I mean, they may be expensive in some situations, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes you don't pay that much money and you get so much stuff because of stretch goals and all that kind of jazz. And then you forget about it, and all of a sudden you get this giant pile of miniatures that shows up at, like 16, 18 months later. And then you're like, oh, crap, I forgot about that. And then, you have it. So, and if you did that a couple of times over the course of the year and then forgot about it, that pigeon comes home to roost. So, yeah, that's kind of a thing. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Just gonna... I got something down the wrong pipe there, sorry. Uncle Adam, God, yes, I have a Kickstarter problem. My pile of plastic shame has become a mountain because of Kickstarter campaigns. Trying to avoid Kickstarter at all costs now. And, that's not a bad plan in some situations, but sometimes stuff comes across from Kickstarter, you're like, yeah, but this is really awesome. And, so you have to make a decision. If it's like, this is really cool and I think I might like it, and it comes with a pile of miniatures, then I would say no, because you might like it, and it comes with a pile of miniatures. But if, like, this is really awesome and it's very few miniatures and it's really awesome, and you're, and then fine. Okay, maybe pull the trigger. But if you're like, well, that's sort of cool, and I got $68 for floating around in my back pocket or whatever, then maybe think about it again. Have a nap and then think about it again. Something like that. Has anyone ever used... Oh, where did it go? Someone just asked a question about saran wrap, and then the page moved. Has anyone ever used saran wrap / cling film to mask off terrain for use of spray primer? It would have to be the right size or shape, because saran wrap doesn't stick to much of anything except itself, kind of. So you'd have to wrap it around the thing a little bit, I would think. Or you could use it and then tape it down with, like, masking tape, I guess. You could try that. Blocking the light over here. Look at this. But yeah, so you could do something like that maybe. But generally, what I generally would use if I have to, like, mask off a big area is I use masking tape and then put paper, and then just tape the paper to the masking tape that I already put down, and then just cover the rest of the area, and then it usually works out pretty well. You could do the same thing, I guess, with masking tape. You could lay down, with saran wrap. You could lay down masking tape to make the sharp edge you need, and then tape saran wrap to the first piece of masking tape with another piece of masking tape, and then just cover the rest of the area with saran wrap, and then that would hold it there pretty well, and then you wouldn't get paint on stuff. That might be a thing to do. Question, have you tried playing Burrows and Badgers? I think it would be a good intro game. It's a skirmish game and you only need a few models. I have a copy of it. Osprey sent me a copy of it. The book, at least. I don't think I have any of the models. I don't think so. I haven't tried it. It's like anthropomorphic animals and stuff like that, and that's not really in my interest area, I guess, maybe. But I have not tried it out. It's one of those things where if I could find somebody running it like at Adepticon or Gen Con, it's something I would be very interested to sit down and play a demo of, so I could at least get an idea of it. But to sit down and say, cool, I'm going to play this, I don't have any of the models, so I either have to buy models and then paint them, or proxy models, and then I'm like, well, this Space Marine is a badger, and this Stormtrooper is a bird, or whatever, or a rabbit. It's a gorgeous book. It's a very, very nice book. I did, when I got it, I flipped through it a lot, and it's very nice, hardcover, and really nice artwork on the inside. Let me see here. Question, what's your opinion on the newer Primaris models, like the Infiltrators and the Suppressors? Personally, I like all of them, but I know that quite a few people don't like them. I like all the Primaris new models. Like, I can't think of anything that GW in the last couple of years has put out that I've looked at and said that's a bad sculpt. I mean, there's stuff that they've put out that I've been like, that's not my aesthetic interest, or that's not my even gaming interest. Like they've put out new stuff here and there for Eldar, and I'm not an Eldar player and don't generally like Eldar, so I look at it and I go, I'm not going to buy that, but I can see it and go, that's a good sculpt. You know what I mean? Like there's a technical kind of like, yeah, this has definitely got a thing. Like if you look, sometimes you can look at a model and you're like, that's way out of proportion. That looks really weird, or that arm is too long. Which if you're a gene stealer cultist, well, that's kind of the point. But in certain games, in certain models, you can look at them and go, like sometimes you're just like, where's all the detail in the middle part there? Like that guy's got a tummy, I guess, but I can't tell where his shirt ends and his pants begin, or is he wearing a belt? It's just a mess there, and that's not something that I've seen come out of Games Workshop in a long time, or most of the big companies. Again, Malifaux. I think that there's something to be said for, and a lot of people don't. Some people don't like the computer sculpted models. I do, because there's almost always still detail. You rarely put together a computer model as you're doing it on the screen and go, yeah, I'm just going to be like, there's some stuff over there by his butt. You know what I mean? Like you sculpt everything because you have the ability to control Z and zoom in and do all this kind of stuff. Whereas when you're doing everything by hand and like using green stuff on an armature and sculpting, there's times when you're like, that's close enough. Not everybody. There are some people who are absolutely amazing at hand sculpting and are tenacious in making sure that everything is perfect, but not everybody's like that. And it's a little harder to get away with in the computer, because it's kind of like a little bit along the lines of like when you paint a model and you're done, you should always try to take pictures of it, because you'll always find stuff you missed. There's something about the screen where you're like, oh cripes, I forgot to sculpt that part. Where when you're moving it around, it's easy to spot. Whereas if you're looking at it in physical life and you're looking at painting a model and you're like, yeah, that's awesome, I got it, nailed it, and then you set it down, and you start taking pictures of it, and then you're like, wow, I forgot that end of the hilt on the sword. How did I do that? And it's because you're looking at it. I think personally it's because now you're looking at it in a two-dimensional representation as opposed to looking at it in three-dimensional representation, and there's something there where your eye, especially if you've been looking at it for a long time, your eye just glosses over stuff, and then when you look at it on a screen, your eye doesn't. Oh, look, the camera stopped. So, update on the camera issue, if I can fix that. There we go. Is I ordered a new piece of stuff. There we go. I ordered something called an ATEM Mini, ATEM Mini from Blackmagic Design. They're a company that makes some cameras, and they make a bunch of like live streaming stuff and a bunch of things. They're more cinema aimed to some degree, but they're getting more into live streaming stuff. Different than Elgato, which is Elgato makes this little doohickey. Anyway, so I ordered this thing called the ATEM Mini, and it has the ability to plug up to 4 different HDMI inputs into it and switch between them, and it's an amazing piece of kit, and it's also surprisingly cheap. But sadly, that means that it's on back order, so like nobody's got it right now, unfortunately. So I ordered it from B&H Photo, and it's on back order. And so hopefully when it gets here, then I'll be able to plug not only this camera into it again, and hopefully it won't be doing this kind of locking up thing that this Elgato seems to do from time to time, but I'll hopefully be able to plug even a second camera in and get back to being able to show you maybe some close-up stuff, especially once I move this whole dog and pony show, hopefully into the basement. But at the very least, when I first start, I'll probably be using the ATEM Mini here just to make it so that the camera doesn't lock up again. I'm not sure why it's locking up today, because it's not particularly warm here in the house. For a while I was blaming it on, I'm just checking the temperature. Before a while I was just blaming it on the, on it being summer and pieces of equipment overheating or whatever. But now it's like, it's 66 degrees in here right now, which is not particularly warm, and it's going to get cooler because I always turn off the furnace when I'm going to do a live show, because otherwise it makes a lot of noise and you can hear it in the background. I mean, there's already, Lord knows, enough background noise, but I try to cut it down a little bit. In the summer, I usually turn off the air conditioning as well, so same thing. Anyway, that's where I'm at. Where are we at? Let's see here. Okay, so New Primaris, I generally like most of them. I haven't come across a single one where I'm like, well, that looks janky. Even those weird flying guys with the long guns, those are, I think, kind of fun. J Solo Art says that is exactly how I started my commission painting business on eBay with Star Wars Legion. eBay set the market price, and my love of Star Wars and mini painting did the rest. See, that's the kind of the way to sort of do it. Like, it's hard to find people locally sometimes to get commission painting going. What I've got friends local who are not Sam, who are commission painters. My good friend Josh from Warstein Studios, which if you look him up on Instagram, you can find his work there. Warstein it's like a stein, like a big stein, but it's for war, so it's for punching. And anyway, he has business cards that he has at the local shop, and the local shop has got a cabinet full of all kinds of work, including a bunch of his. So that when you come into the local shop, you can see painted cool miniatures, which a lot of shops do. And so when people are like, I really want to get this, but I don't know how to paint, or whatever, then shop owner or employees can be like, oh, well, here's a business card, and send business his way. Because the thing is that, like, the shop owner doesn't take any kind of commission for saying, hey, here's a guy who can paint your stuff. They just know then that you will then probably buy stuff from shop owner to then give to painter. And so if the sticking point is like, well, I would buy the stuff, but I want it painted and I can't find anybody to paint it, then I'm not going to buy it. Well, the game store owner wants that to go forward. So they're like, yeah, this guy will do it. And so you can reach out to them and blah, blah, blah. So that's also a good way to get kind of started too. Especially it's also nicer in your local area because then you're not messing around with shipping as much. Like if they live sort of near you, you can get back together and meet at the shop and then be like, here it is, it's done. And they're like, here you go, here's your money, and then boom, or whatever. I do want to talk a little bit more about that coming up too in a video. I think that when I was talking earlier about talking to different painters and stuff like that at Adepticon and doing a video like that, I actually want to do a couple. I want to do a new one just talking to painters and whatnot, but I also want to do one talking to commission painters, which not everybody who's at Adepticon is a commission painter. Who's the one I can think of off the top of my head? Well, Vince. I don't think that Vince Venturella does commission painting. I'm pretty sure he just paints for himself and for competitions. And there's other people too who are just like Tom Ailes. He's the last American Slayer sword winner from 2013. I did an interview with him in like February 2014. And he paints just for himself. He does not do commission painting. Most painters who are like pros and stuff like that do commission work, but not all of them. So I forget where I was going with that. Anyway, so I want to make a video talking to commission painters about like how they got started and things like that, and do some of that stuff as well, I think, this year at Adepticon. The Killing Bean says, question, just starting with Warcry, I'm now building the miniatures. The details are amazing, but are Warhammer always this fragile? The Drill Master's chain looks like it's going to break very easy. The Warcry models, like, because I was building the Bird Dudes, Corvus Cabal, and they are super, super, super thin. Like, really, they're very... I'm kind of surprised how thin they are. I'm a little nervous, honestly, about the Bird Dudes. Like the Iron Golems, not so much. Like, you can just tell from the name that these are probably some chunky folks, and so they're not likely to break, although the big long chain that they're spinning around, which looks amazing and very dynamic, is another one of those things where you're like, yeah, that's going to snap the heck off at some point. So, I don't know exactly how you fix that problem, to be honest with you. I did... With some Malifaux miniatures, there was a guy that I bought several years ago who was this big, tall sort of dude for the Frycorps. I can't think of his name now, but he's like twice as tall as everybody else in that force, and he's got like a big giant barrel on his back or a tank, and he's got these gloves that are like steam powered somehow, and he's punching people or whatever, and he's in a very dynamic, cool pose. But they had these very thin plastic like wires that were supposed to go from his fists to the tank to show like he's powered up or whatever. And I'm like, and they were just the tiniest little flimsiest things. I'm like, nope. And I just replaced them with wire. And it worked out fine. Obviously now with that drill guy, he's got a chain, so that's going to be a tough one. I don't know how to fix that problem. That's a good question. Yeah, I do. a lot of times I look at models and I think to myself, that's really gorgeous, but how is it ever going to go anywhere? And in some situations, how are you even get some of that stuff off the sprue, successfully? That can be a problem as well. So, yeah, normally Warhammer models are thicker. Like they're normally beefy. People refer to it as heroic scale. Like when you see like a guardsman, like their wrist is the same width as their entire hand. Like they're just like thick. And that's kind of a little bit by design. And also just because it makes it so that it's harder to break the model. But I think that to some degree, Games Workshop has been trying to make things look a lot more dynamic and amazing. And Lord knows that Weird Games with Malifaux has been doing the same thing. Like a lot of those Malifaux miniatures look amazing and are super dynamically posed, but you can also talk to somebody who builds a bunch of them and they will have this 1,000-yard stare and just be like, dude, like, because some of them are really hard to build because they can be such a pain like that. So that's a little bit of a bummer. And like, look at like something like Sylvaneth, those tree folks, like they're not super crazy hard to build, but again, super fragile. And if you're going to put them in foam and try to take them to the shop or to your buddy's house or whatever like that, they're going to get caught a lot on stuff and potentially break. So what a lot of people do in those situations then is they magnetize the base. They put a little, one of those little rare earth, neodymium, which is this technical term, magnets in the, underneath the base. They glue it in there so that they can then attach the model directly onto like a piece of metal, like whether you have like, let's say, a metal toolbox or you've got something that has metal plate in it, and then instead of like laying this tree person model down into like a foam cutout maybe and getting it stuck, you just go click and attach it to the base, and then it's not touching anything as you go on your travels to your buddy's house. Now, I would not highly suggest throwing them into the checked luggage on your airline flight, but if you're careful with them and keep them in your carry-on, you can probably even still get away with doing that because you're more in control of that bag. I mean, people who go to big conventions like Adepticon and stuff like that and bring models to paint or to show off at painting competitions like the old Crystal Brush and now the new Golden Demon and stuff like that, like if they're on a plane, they have to be, I don't know that I've ever met anybody who's bought a second airline seat for their models, but I've talked to a lot of people who've had a case that has been sitting on their lap, and sometimes the steward, the airline, whatever, flight attendants are like, no, you got to put that someplace. And, so I don't know how you do that stuff. That's why I'm glad I only live about 3 hours away, 3 hours drive away from Adepticon. And I'm also glad I don't get into paint competitions. So there's that too. All right. Let's see here. Negu says when you hit below the belt, you yell Menards. It's this big chain of hardware stores here in the Midwest called Menards, which is kind of funny. Anyway, VJ Morph says, have decided to get into Monsterpocalypse. Let's see if I can score it for Christmas. Ooh, Monsterpocalypse. I remember back when that was like, when that first came out and it was a pre-painted game, and I think that they were random too. Like you bought a box and you didn't know what was in it, kind of like HeroClix. Yeah, that's. I'm glad that they went the other way, honestly, where you can kind of paint your own stuff and I think you know what you're getting now when you buy it, right? Don't you? Or is it still random, just unpainted? I think you know what you're getting. I don't know. I haven't looked super hard into it. I tried to get into the game a little bit and tried to even play it a couple of times, and something about I don't know if they've changed the game system or not, but at the time, something with the game system just did not click in my brain, so it didn't work out. Let's see here. Use a green screen or a sheet behind the wash tub. Put people saying, oh, well, for the Craigslist. Like, yeah, I could just also knock out the background in Photoshop if I had to, but yeah. Let's see here. Actually, the newest version of Photoshop did just add a new, which I want to try out. So like every week on Friday when I do, well, technically I do it on Thursday usually, when I make the thumbnail for my videos, and there's like a picture, like there's a still of me from the video, and it's like cut out and has like the white outline around it. Like it doesn't take forever, but it does take a bit of time. And the systems that are built into Photoshop to like, cut things out away from the background, they're always, Sometimes they're more trouble than they're worth. I'm saying as a professional, they're just like, it's like more messing around. And again, since this is not for print, this is a real, it's a thumbnail. It's like, I don't know, 1280 by 720, or maybe it's 1920 by 1080, whatever. It's a size, but it's small in comparison to like what print stuff would be. Then I don't usually take a ton of time. I just use the straight lasso and I just go dot 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 dot, and go all the way around and cut myself out, and it's fine. But now there's evidently a new thing where you can just like click on a thing and it will figure out using, I don't know, AI, machine learning, fuzzy logic, who knows, and it will figure it out and take care of it. And I'm like, I want to try that out, but I have a suspicion it ain't going to work like they say it will. We shall see. The Animaster says, I won't lie, a workmate came up to me and told me about the new Xbox, so I had to check it out. Please forgive me. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I saw pictures of it. It's tall. Like, in the past, consoles generally are like low and flat, and this seems to be sort of tall and skinny box thing. I don't know. I think some people are going to be sad about that, maybe, because they're like, well, I got this thing underneath my TV that my TV sits on, and stuff that's flat usually goes in there, and I don't know where to put this thing now, which is fine. People will figure it out. I thought the name was dumb. It's the Xbox Series X. It's just, I don't know. One of the reasons that I think it's great that PlayStation is just like, it's the PlayStation 5, because the previous one was the PlayStation 4. Like, I don't know. Anyway, as a marketer, I do wonder. It's like kind of like when not Games Workshop, when Apple was like, oh, hey, yeah, we made the, there was like the iPad, and then the iPad 2, and then there was just the iPad. And like, you mean the new iPad, the iPad 3? They're like, no, it's not called the iPad 3. It's not called the new iPad. It's just called the iPad. And people were like, oh, so you mean the iPad 3? Because we need to figure out a way to differentiate it from what you've done in the past. And that's just the way. And now they've like, yeah, because now it's not. They've just kept pushing that narrative of like, we're not numbering the iPads, and now you don't know what the heck one you're buying. You've got to like pay like close attention and be like, what year did this come out? Am I buying an old one here at the Best Buy? Because they won't tell me, because they don't know. Yeah, I just like that, like with PlayStation, they're just like, this is the fifth one, so we're gonna call it PlayStation 5. Surprise. Now there's a good chance that at some point they will then, to spite me, they'll be like, this is the PlayStation Next, and then people will be like, stop it, just go back and call it the 6 or the 8 or whatever. Let me see here. A lot of the small mini manufacturers are a good source of conversion parts, says Two Heads Talking. Yeah, I could see that too. That makes sense. Fowen31 says, oh yeah, the Corvus are fiddly. I almost gave up on it. Yeah, I haven't given up, but I did glue a bunch of the bases on wrong, like, because they added a new size of base that they've never had before. Like, it's always been like 25s and then like 32s and 40s and 50s and 60s. And in the Corvus Cabal, there are 25s and 28 millimeter bases. And I did not pay close enough attention, and I glued some guys to 25s when they should have been on 28s and vice versa. And now I'm like, well, crap. So I'm going to try to figure out how to get those skinny little dudes off of the bases they're on. I'll just use some debonder and then go to town from there. But yeah. John Ashley Smith says, sold 2 of my Gaslands builds at a Hot Wheels show back in November. Now officially a paid artist. Lifelong ambition realized. See, that's fun too. I mean, I think there's a benefit. Like, if you really just enjoy doing that, there's certainly easily ways you could just sit there and buy and convert and paint up Gaslands cars and then throw them on eBay, making sure to use the term Gaslands and stuff like that. And then those would sell, The problem is that people aren't going to want to pay a ton for them, but, The thing is, too, is that there's a big benefit to, like, people talk about, like if you're trying to do it as a job, then it's hard because almost no one wants to pay what it should be worth based off of the amount of time you might put into it. But if you're like, I need to get better at painting, so I'm going to keep practicing and doing all that stuff with all of these models, but then I'm going to end up potentially with lots and lots of extra models laying around the house that I may not even use, then why not flip them on eBay? You know what I mean? And that's a thing, too, is that in my mind, you put Like a lot of times if you're buying bits, if I'm buying bits on eBay for conversions, I'm always looking for the ones where it's like buy it now. I'm like, oh, okay, $4, cool. As opposed to, oh, the starting bid is $3, and now I have to wait for 7 days to find out what the winning bid is and go back and forth. I don't care for that on normal stuff like bits and things like that. But if it's a cool pre-painted, pro-painted miniature and stuff like that that looks really amazing in the photography, then the bidding, I think, is an important thing, because then you're going to start it out and say, this is the least that I'm going to take for it. And then people will be like, well, okay, cool, I'll go $3 above that. And someone's like, well, I'll go $2 above that. And it'll just keep going. And in some situations, you'll make $4 more than you had hoped. And in other situations, you might make $100 more. Hard to say. Like Sam has had, back in the day when he used to paint those things for spec, he'd have some that would sell at the base price. Like nobody would bid. And this was before he was well known, of course. But nobody would bid until like the last day, and someone would bid like once, and then they get it for, whatever. But then there would be other ones that would go for, like 2 people would get into a fight over it and just keep bidding it up, and then there you go. So that's kind of what you want. That's what you hope for. So if you're going to be doing things like that, let's say you sit down and start just making Gaslands, stuff. You start making a bunch of those cars and painting them up and selling them, put them out there at like $7 starting bid, let's say. And, to be fair, you might have worked, like maybe you get paid $20 an hour at your day job. So, you spent 3 hours on it. So obviously that's not a great thing, but you also now don't have to have all these extra things. Like, hold on to the ones you like. But if you did it just because you're practicing and trying to do stuff and whatever, that's kind of the thing. If you can take your practice models, like I personally generally can't part with stuff I've painted. There's stuff I've sold off, but I've kept the things that I've painted. Like, when I got into War Machine for a while, I painted up some Khador. Excuse me. I painted up some Khador, and then, and then when I decided I'm not playing War Machine, no one around here is playing War Machine, I sold off all my unpainted stuff, but I kept my painted stuff. It's not nearly as good as the stuff that I can paint these days, but I still kept it. But that's me. If you're like, I keep painting all this stuff to practice and get better, and now I've just got a room full of painted stuff that I don't even play with, well, then throw it on eBay, There's no reason not to. Let's see here. Nelson says, hello, Adam and community. I'm new here, but y'all seem neat. Well, I mean, I'm frankly kind of messy. I'm not going to lie to you, but I appreciate the sentiment. Let's see here. Brian Etheridge says that AdMac have had some really fiddly bits. That's also true. They are also, in some places, pretty spindly. I just built, earlier this year, I built a kill team for AdMac that has not been primed yet, or their base is textured, but they're built. The Rust Stalkers, I did not build. Those actually I bought built at the Bits guy at Nova, maybe? I think it was Nova. Maybe it was Nova last year. Actually, now I can think it was Nova 2018. And so I've heard that they're a real pain to build. So luckily I didn't have to build them. I did have to go through and clear out mold lines and stuff like that. But yeah. But the normal, Rangers or Vanguards and stuff like that, not terrible to build, but not awesome. They are a little spindly. If you want fine and fragile tiny parts, try 1/700th scale shipbuilding sometime. No, that's why I don't do that. Neomibdium. Yeah, I think you spelled that right, VJ Morph. That's pretty close. Let's see here. Why on earth would they make 28mm bases? I don't know. When I figured it out, because from a distance on the instructions, 25 and 28 kind of look the same because of 5 and an 8, especially because it was printed in a little gray circle on the instructions. Well, gray, when you print a black and white thing, is actually made up of a series of tiny little dots. So when you have white in a gray dot, it's not a clear, and it was small, and so I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, 25, yeah, so okay, great. And so I did that when I should have been putting them on 28s, because it came with both in the box, which is, so some of the models need to be on 25s, some on 28s, and then others on 32s, or maybe, I don't think there's a 40, maybe there's a 40 in there. Like the big dude who's on stilts and has got the wide wings, maybe he's on a 40, but everybody else is on like 25s and 28s, and it's kind of annoying. So yeah. DTM Jack says, I just bid the most I'm willing to pay and then forget it until it's over. Sometimes I snag a good deal that way. Yeah, that's how I eBay too. I haven't done much on eBay lately. But if something is a bid, like a thing you got to bid on, then I look at it and I go, I would not pay more than $26 for that. Boom. And I set $26 and I walk away. And then 3 days later, I get a thing saying, hey, you've been outbid. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't want it that much. That's kind of the way it works. For me, at least, that's how I do eBay. However, if you're selling stuff on eBay, you want two people who have no impulse control and who just want to just kind of fight that way. That's what you're really looking for, in my opinion. Let me see. One of the keys I've learned from my commission, says JTick, is to make the right amount of money. It's all about batch painting. I try to take a bunch of commissions and paint all blue and all red, etc. Oh, yeah. If you want to get into commission painting as a side business or a full-time business, from the people that I've talked to, and again, I'm not talking from a place of I've ever done doing it because I'm not a commission painter, but I've got friends that are commission painters, including Mr. Tick here. Efficiencies, it's all about efficiencies. Like the fastest way to get things done but still make them look good is always the important thing. I talk to people all the time who are not commission painters, and they're like, oh, I finished this model finally. I've been working on it for a month. You can't do that with commission painting. You have to be able to crank as fast as possible. So it's a lot of airbrush because you can get things done quickly that way. It's a lot of washes. It's a lot of, that kind of stuff. When you come to a commission painter and say, look, I have this guy who's going to be the general for my army. He needs to be spectacular. I'm willing to spend a couple $100 to get him painted like to an incredibly high level. And you're doing that because you know that person's work already from everything you've seen online or you've seen it in person or whatever. When someone comes to Sam and is like, because he doesn't do that much in the commissions anymore, but there are times when people will come to him and go, look, I will pay you. Like he did what's his name, Archaon, like the big, huge, giant Age of Sigmar, kind of guy riding the three-headed monster dude or whatever. Like he did one for like $1,000, I think. I could be wrong, but I thought it was about that much. Like someone came to him and was like, look, this is what I want, and I have the money. And then he's like, okay, but you still have to look at it and try to figure out how to get it done as quickly as possible, that kind of stuff. Because if it takes you forever, now you go back and look at all your numbers and like, cool, I was working for $4 an hour, and that's hard to do when you're trying to do it for something that is your day job. If you're doing it for a side gig and you just want to do it for extra money, well, then that's your prerogative. You can do that if you want to. But if you're trying to do it and make it like a job, that's a harder thing to do. So, yeah. Seizure Salad asks, I bought a Gale Force 9 Battlefield in a box Rocky Hill and my models keep sliding down the slope. Is there a way to make the ground a bit rubbery without losing detail? I don't want to flock it with grass. If you have a piece of terrain that's kind of weird like that, what I have a tendency to do sometimes is actually take a little piece of poster putty and stick it up underneath the inside of the model. Like if this guy needs to sit right in this one spot and he's on a slope or whatever the deal is, then you can just take a little piece of poster putty and kind of stick it underneath there, and then when he gets back on the flat area, you can just pull that poster putty out and put him where he needs to go. That's what I've done in the past because I've got the old school Realm of Battle board from Games Workshop. Like the ones that's got like the modular, it's got the hills, but it's also got those cracks in the ground and you can see skulls in there because like evidently the planet that is on is all made of skulls. Anyway, like there's a bunch of weird little slopes on that board where like if you put a guy on there, he'd just be like wee and just ski down to the bottom. So yeah, that's what I used to do, is just take a piece of poster putty in there and stick it, or sometimes even just on the rim. It doesn't look awesome, but it keeps the person specifically there if you need to. Yeah. Dead-Eye Duck says, hi Uncle Adam, in terms of kit bashing, I am currently painting my abhumans made from Gretchen bodies and AdMac mainly heads and Imperial guns. Very random. Oh, that does sound like fun. Like Gretchens with like robot heads and Imperial guns. That's pretty cool. See, that's the kind of fun stuff that is cool in kit bashing. Like the kit bashing stuff that I'm planning on is going to not be super high end. Like I'm not going to be getting into cutting up a lot of like limbs and repositioning things and sculpting and a lot of green stuff and things like that. It's going to be, some modifications to bits here and there, like different heads and gun swaps and some other things, and maybe some like taking these guys' legs and putting them on somebody else and that kind of stuff. But it's not a lot of Yeah, it's gonna be more like that. Brian Griffith says that new Sisters of Battle are on 28 millimeter bases. I'm told. I'll have to look at that. There's a very good possibility that they're deciding to get rid of 25s. I mean, 25s could be going away, and 28s might become the new 25s, just because the models keep getting bigger to some degree. I mean, think about it back in the day when the Necrons first came out, and they put them on 25 millimeter bases, and it was always like, because those Necrons, especially the warriors, a lot of them have got such a wide stance. Sometimes you were just gluing their heels to the very edges. Like they're sitting like this, their legs have got this wide stance, and so you would just glue like their heels to the very edges of the 25 millimeter base, and then finally one day they were like, oh, look, we made 32s. Now, why you wouldn't make 32s for Sisters or for anybody going forward and just get rid of 25/28s altogether and just go with 32s, I don't know. I mean, obviously Gretchens wouldn't work super hot on a 32. That would look a little weird. But Gretchens are there's not a lot of armies anymore that have some figures that are that small, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. So, yeah, I don't know. MRE Funk says, so if you're selling on eBay, you want two of me fighting over it. LOL. Yes, that's exactly. That sounds like you're admitting something there, and that's fine. J Solo Art says that the Captain Marvel mini from Crisis Protocol was a serious SOB to build, and I don't think you mean Sisters of Battle in that situation. Yeah, I could see that she's sort of standing up and got just like the 1 foot touching, if I remember correctly. I think if that's the model that I'm thinking of, yeah. Brian Etheridge says, if you want to play one of those other games, it's not easy to find a game, hence Game 4. Well, that's a good idea. You should use Game 4. If it's hard to find, I'm guessing most will default back to the game that they can find a game for. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happens with local areas. You'll have this kind of, like, people refer to local meta, and there's a lot of ways that term is used. Sometimes local meta is something to connotate, like, well, of the, say, 40K players in my local area, the majority of them like to play orcs for some reason in my region of the state, let's say. And so there's a lot of orc players. That's my local meta, is a lot of orc players. So everyone who wants to play against them and do well has to figure out a way to deal with lots of infantry, easily. Whereas maybe in other parts of the country, the meta is different and plays in a different way. And then when you come to big, like, nationwide tournaments, that's when all of a sudden the metas get mixed together and things get a little squirrely, which is interesting. But sometimes local meta as a term can also be used to be like, well, like for a long time, and I don't think it's the case anymore, but for a long time, like, nobody played War Machine up here in my neck of the woods, and still kind of doesn't. But there was a lot of War Machine playing going on down near Milwaukee. Now, from what I understand, that's kind of changed, and that's, again, a change in the local meta. But, I mean, you get that kind of stuff. There's games that are like, nobody plays that game here, and then you talk to somebody on the other side of the country, and they're like, oh, that game is the only game that gets played around over here. 40K, and to some degree Age of Sigmar, those are kind of standards most everywhere, but there are other games that get popular in certain areas, certain regions of the country or the world that just happen. And a lot of times it's because a couple of people start playing it, and they're maybe, for lack of a better term, because I kind of hate this term, they're more the alpha gamers. We refer to them as instigators at Game 4. But they're the ones that shows up at the shop and is like, this is a cool game, and this is what we play. And then other people are like, come to the shop and they're like, I'm tired of 40K, let's say, or they've never played before. They're just like, this looks cool, and then they get into that. So that's why in some areas of the country you'll find that Infinity is the most popular game to be played at the shop, or maybe Flames of War or whatever, and people don't play 40K there very much. But it depends on the region and the country and that kind of stuff. And that's what's interesting to me. But that's what something like the app Game 4 is really useful for, because you can find out kind of what people are, not only what people are playing in the local area, but if you use the looking for players function, like, you'd be like, you can post a thing in there saying, look, I'm not interested in 40K. I want to play Bolt Action. And when the shop is 40K all day, but you use Game 4 and you say, I want to play Bolt Action, you might find one or two other people who are like, yeah, I want to play Bolt Action too. And then you start to build a group and kind of go that direction. So I think that's very well done. The newer Games Workshop kits make modding harder. Back when the figures were modular, life was funner. Funner is technically not a word, but I see where you're going with that. So there's like what they call the monopose, and then the multi-part, I think is the technical term. I could be wrong on that. But monopose models are the ones that go together generally kind of one way. When you see those single figure kind of clamshell models that you buy on the peg at the store, and it's like a chaos leader guy doing this for reasons, I don't know why, but that kind of stuff. They go together one way, but they look really cool and they have a cool pose and stuff like that. But yeah, they go together kind of the one way. When you buy the easy to build kits, the press fit kits, those have a tendency to go together pretty much just one way. Whereas like when you used to build Space Marines or orcs and stuff like that, like you've got a torso and you've got legs and they can go together sort of, like if you want the guy to be twisted this way or twisted that way, you could do that, or like this or like that. So yeah, it was customizable, but not that customizable. Basically, your torso is still going to sit on your legs, which is where they're supposed to sit anyway, kind of. But yeah, you could move it around a bit, and you could move the gun. You could do this, or you could do that. Or maybe a little bit of this, but because the arm's glued on. But yeah, you could turn the head over this way or that way. With monopose models, where they go together only one way, you can still just grind off that head and put a different head in there. It's not hard. I've used a Dremel, honestly. I'll just like clip away at it with my clippers until it gets down to about like neck level, and I'll just take the Dremel and the right type of kind of rounded bit and just kind of like and just grind out like where the neck and the head, and then just put some green stuff in there, new head, boom, done. It's not that difficult, but yeah, the ability to make a very dynamically posed, very interesting model kind of takes away the ability to make it modular or customizable. And so it depends on which way you like. And people are super impressed by seeing a really interestingly posed model, whereas when you show them just a whole bunch of, Space Marines all holding a gun, and then one guy is holding like a sword and doesn't have his helmet on, people are like, yeah, okay. And admittedly, you could turn all those little torsos, you could turn the heads the way you want to and stuff like that, but they all kind of look the same anyway. They're just looking in different directions. It's a personal preference thing. But for a lot of the model, I mean, yeah, your single models, like your HQ type units, they have a tendency to be selling those a lot now where they go together one way and everyone's kind of looks the same. But like even the Primaris now, they still make the kits that are multi-pose or whatever you want to call it, for them, for Reavers. They don't do it for everybody, admittedly, but they do it for a bunch of the stuff. Even like Death Guard and things like that. If you buy the right Death Guard box, it's not press fit. They go together in all kinds of different ways. The old, well, it's not that old, but kind of old, Putrid Blight Kings, those models all go together certain ways, but they've been so smart about the combinations. Like you get 5 models in that box, but you could take 2 or 3 of those boxes and follow the instructions to the word and be able to make all 15 of them look totally different. Like there's so many cool different variations. When you get done with those Putrid Blight Kings, if you just build 5 of them out of the box, you have so many extra weird parts that you could probably use as conversions. It's very interesting. But they're all monopose, except that they have like 4 different variants. So like, yeah, well, this head only goes on this direction and it slides in there and it's perfect. But we have 3 other heads that are all different. This one has antlers and this one, whatever, but they all go in the same spot. So you can take these models and put them together, and a trained eye can look at them and go, this is kind of the same chassis as this one. But you can tell like these legs are the same on these 2 models, but this guy's torso's got a face in it, and this guy's torso's got an axe sticking in it, and then this guy's arms are different and all that kind of stuff, and it sort of builds up from there. That the Putrid Blight Kings for Age of Sigmar is an amazing, amazing kit. Even if you just build them like completely normally, like out of the box the way they tell you to, they're still awesomely amazing kits. Hi, Uncle Adam. Any tips for buying conversion kits? I've run into scale issues where not everybody means the same thing by heroic 28mm scale, and bits don't always fit well together. I find that with heads. Like, there's times when you buy like some heads and then you get them and then you're like, well, these are smaller or larger than I kind of thought. Sometimes you just run with it. It depends on what you're doing. Sometimes you're just like, well, these guys have got small heads. Or you go, well, look, actually that head is the right size. Just that guy's armor is really big because it's power armor and there's a lot of padding on the inside. Or whatever. You can make up some decisions. And sometimes you just look at it and go, this head's not going to work for this project. That happens too. The issue is, frankly, is that in most situations, it's hard to go to a store and buy heads. You almost always have to buy conversion kits online because a lot of stores don't carry them. Some do. If you've got a store near you that carries a bunch of like Spellcrow and Puppets War and Anvil Industries and stuff like that, and they've got tons of that stuff in the store, you are a lucky duck. Honestly, most stores don't carry any of that stuff, so you got to end up buying them online. And when you buy them online, then it's hard to know exactly how big they are. Sometimes you can maybe reach out to the company and say, "Can you measure this and tell me how many millimeters it is, top to bottom and side to side?" And then try to figure out if that's going to work for you or not. But the problem is that at that scale, the difference is, in some situations, can be as little as a millimeter. You know what I mean? Like, well, if that guy's head was 6 millimeters across, it would be just fine. But since it's 5, he looks like a pinhead. And so it's tough. It is that is a tough thing about buying those online. Generally, you're not paying a ton, so sometimes you're like, okay, this isn't going to work for the project I kind of thought it was going to, but I'll just hold on to them and use them for something else. But yeah. Let's see here. I think Uncle Adam is based in Wisconsin. Yes, I am based in Wisconsin. That is true. I only understood the reason to kit bash when I started picking up codexes. There's something to be said about the lore being that compelling. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And for me, honestly, a lot of times kit bashing is... For me, it's when I want to use GW models in non-GW games. Honestly, it's a lot of times me like wanting to take the GW models and tweak them and make them different and interesting and use them in a different game. And because I love the models, but sometimes I'm like, there's different games I want to try out, and I think that this will work better in this game versus that game or whatever, and so that's what I do too. What was the name of the app he was talking about for Player Finder? It's called Game4, Gamefor, not the number 4, but Game4, all one word. You can find it on the App Store for Apple, iOS, whatever. You can find it on Google Play Store for Android, and also there's a website. Let me type it in. It is www.game4.com. Thank you, Mechanical Keyboard, for being so clicky. My wife loves it. Loves it. Let's see here. But yeah, so Game4 is the app that you can use to find... Right now we've got 6,700 stores worldwide in our database, so pretty much anywhere you are, anywhere you travel, you can always find the closest game store. That's a cool feature. And also it has the ability to find events that are posted by game stores, game clubs, individuals, things like that in your local area, and also looking for players, which are not events. They're more just like a person saying, look, I want to play this or this or this, and I will play at this shop and that shop, and send me a message in the app. And I'm not asking for, you don't need to email them or send them a text. They don't have to share their phone number with you. All the messaging can be done in the app. So like, safety, privacy, all that cool stuff. It's neat. So check that stuff out. What else have we got here? Converted a metal Saruman to fit on a horse. The material makes converting difficult, though. It's not impossible. It took me ages. Some people I generally prefer to convert plastic or resin. Metal is hard because it is physically harder, actually, than it turns out, than plastic. So that's one thing. Some people love converting metal and hate converting plastic. That's not me. I generally prefer to convert plastic and resin if I can. Probably one of the reasons why so many the companies that make conversion bits and stuff like that generally make them out of resin. Like I said, every once in a while you find some metal, but it's usually resin. I think it's just cheaper to ship. It's cheaper to produce to some degree. The price of tin fluctuates a lot with metal miniatures and pewter and stuff like that, and so that becomes a real issue. Whereas resin is not. I mean, resin's still not cheap, but it's still it's a bit easier. Adam Villari says, is it just me, or are pewter/heavy models more satisfying to move and play with? For some people, yes, that's very true. They miss, like, if they miss the heft of metal miniatures in comparison to plastic. I like plastic miniatures better because, like I said, I find them easier to convert. I also like because if they fall down, like if a metal miniature gets knocked over or falls off a piece of terrain, I immediately assume it's going to get some paint chipped off of it. Whereas when a light plastic miniature falls off of something, I'm less likely to think it's going to get paint chipped off of it. You know what I mean? Because it's just a mass, velocity, and I don't know, physics and whatnot. So yeah, for me, that's why I prefer generally plastic miniatures myself. But some people really love the moving around these metal miniatures, and so it's a personal preference thing, really. Catherine says, for cutting off model bits, I tend to use a jeweler's saw, which works pretty well. With some practice, you can cut out most things while not ruining the other pieces they're against. I don't know if I have a jeweler's saw. I swear to God, somewhere in the basement I do have a jeweler's saw. But I did just recently buy, like, GW has like this thing it's a handle that looks kind of like an X-Acto blade, but then instead of an X-Acto knife in the top, you put these little saw blades. I bought that kit recently. I was at the game store because I hadn't bought anything from the game store in a while, and I was like, I don't need any more models. But I kind of want to buy something. I'm here and everything, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I don't have a tiny little saw like that. That's not a bad thing. I've tried using it recently. It's not bad. What the heck did I use it? I was trying to cut I think it was like a Tau gun, maybe a Pathfinder gun, and then there's the hand, and then like the gun kind of goes behind the arm, and the arm keeps going, and I wanted to cut at the wrist, but still have like this part where the stock goes down, kind of. I basically wanted to make a guy who was not a Tau holding his arm out like this, and then I cut off at the wrist, and I wanted to glue the Tau hand there and the rest of the gun, so it looked like a human dude holding out a Tau, like Pathfinder rifle, pulse rifle, I don't know what the heck they use, and shooting it for a conversion thing that I was messing with recently. I've been trying, I haven't been hobbying like I had wanted to, but every once in a while I do get to sit in the basement for a little while and do a little bit of converting, which is what made me think about this episode to begin with anyway. I haven't done any painting for quite some time, again, because I've been with the mom stuff and also with the trying to clean the basement stuff. So that's been the carrot, is that hopefully when I get things done I can get back into painting and stuff like that. But I have been doing a little converting here and there because otherwise I'm going to go friggin' nuts. So anyway, I did mess with the saw a little bit on that. I wish that the teeth were smaller on that, so I'm going to see if I can find different blades for it. Not made by Games Workshop. Probably somebody else makes those blades too. But yeah. Someone just mentioned using tiny little saw blades, and then the damn chat window moved again. I bought tiny little saw blades at the hobby shop that fit into a normal X-Acto handle. That's kind of the same thing. I mean, I probably could have just bought those blades and then just used a normal X-Acto handle, but I bought the GW Citadel one because I wanted to support my local shop. And it's fine. It's not a bad thing. Do you mix metal and plastic bits on models, or do you stick with the same material? I've used metal bits on plastic models and plastic bits on metal models. I've done both. I generally stick with regular CA glue, like the normal super glue stuff, and it works just fine. I don't know that plastic cement would work with metal models. That's a good question. So that's why I use the CA glue stuff. Game 4 helped me find my local club that plays AA. Axis and Allies? Cool, though. That's very cool. I'm glad to hear it. I am always worried about running into that person who questions you having a certain weapon when you haven't modeled it on the figure. I generally prefer WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to bust someone else's chops, but I do prefer it when not only when on my own models, but I also prefer it on somebody else's models. Now, there are levels. So if this guy's like, oh yeah, this guy's got this figure's got a missile launcher, and I'm like, I don't see a missile launcher anywhere on him. It's going to be hard for me to remember that this is missile launcher guy. So if you could just put a missile launcher on him, that'd be swell. So for me, I've got that issue. But I'm not going to be like, well, that guy can't throw frag grenades or crack grenades because I don't see any grenades on his belt. That is a different story. Pistols, grenades, melt-a-bombs, junk like that, I'm not going to even pay attention to that stuff so much. I've just, you know what I mean? But like, if this guy is a sniper and he's modeled with a pistol, well, where's the sniper rifle? You know, it for me, it's just basically I'm trying to remember what that guy does, and if I can look at him and see a sniper rifle, I'll be like, oh, cool, that guy's probably a sniper. You know, but if you're like, no, that guy's a flamethrower guy, and I'm like, okay, but he's got a sniper rifle. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't have the flamethrower. Well, that's for me. That's I'll play, but I prefer for it to be able to see, like, at least on the primary weapon, something that's close. Now, when you start playing other kinds of games, like Zone Raiders, Star Breach, and other stuff that I've been getting interested in lately that don't have their own committed model lines and all their different weapons are kind of squirrely and weird anyway. Like we all know, if you've been playing GW games for a while, especially 40K, you know what a flamer looks like generally. You know what a grav gun looks like. You know what a plasma weapon looks like, because they have these sort of, like, for lack of a better term, iconic elements to them. The plasma gun always has that kind of grating that goes across the top, and it has that sort of slightly curved and then shaved off tip. And if you paint that grating to glow blue or green or red or whatever, people will be like, oh yeah, plasma gun, cool. Flamers have this kind of tip on the front of them, the little thing that sticks up that's got like the little pilot light, and so you just know grav guns have that weird rounded kind of weird tip on them and stuff like that. So if you're playing a game that has got all kinds of strange and wondrous weapons and there's no parts to relate to them, then you just have to basically be like, well, this guy's got this, and everybody's probably on board if you're playing the same game. But the benefit to a game like 40K that's been around for a long time is you can look at it and go, oh yeah, that's a grav gun or a grav pistol, just because you can look at the tip and go, cool. Now, if the guy turns out and he's like, no, that's actually a plasma gun, you're like, well, but you used a grav gun. You know what I mean? Like, and we can just decide to agree and go, okay, great. But the person who's been playing will look at it and think it's one thing and when it's not, and that can be confusing. So that's one of the reasons why I do like other games other than the Games Workshop as well, is because then I can get all kinds of weird and squirrely and model up stuff. Like if you look at guns, like if you're going to sit down and look at like bolt guns in 40K, bolt guns all look kind of the same. Now you may have another gun that they call something else and looks totally different, but has basically nearly the same stat line. That's fine. But if you look at ballistic guns in our real-world society, they all look kind of different. Like, they have some similarities. There's usually a magazine, and there's a thing, and a whatever, and there's a barrel. But there's a lot of, like, you look at, like, a P90, or FN90, P90, whatever the hell that weird bullpup gun is, versus like a hunting rifle. They look very different, and they have different, statistics, let's say, for lack of a better term. So when I'm playing a game like Zone Raiders or Star Breach or any other kind of game where there's no models that are made for the game, it's just a game system and you get to kit build and bash together the stuff that you want to do, then I can just use all kinds of weapons from all kinds of different games and be like, well, this is an SMG. And like, well, it's short and stubby, so it's an SMG. If I was to like, hey, this gun that this guy's carrying is an SMG, and he was using like a sniper rifle from like the Guard, that would be weird, because you'd be like, well, it just doesn't look like an SMG. It's too long and it looks like a rifle. So even keeping that stuff in mind, even when you're playing a game, using models or things, you kind of have to think about stuff. If something looks like an axe and you're like, actually, that's a laser gun, well, that's weird. So keeping track of that stuff, at least in your mind's eye, when you're trying to build those things can help, because the whole point of putting the right stuff on the model is so that when your opponent looks at it, they can go, I need to be watchful of that guy because he's got a long range, because that's a sniper rifle. If you say that's a sniper rifle guy, but he has no gun at all, I'm going to be like, and then forget, probably because I'm forgetful. So that's really the benefit of getting something kind of WYSIWYG if you can help it. And that's one of the big benefits, I think, also to kitbashing as well. That was a long explanation to talk about that, but there it is. But yeah, like I said, I never bust someone's chops and go, well, that guy doesn't have a melt-a-bomb, so you can't throw a melt-a-bomb. Like, no, that's not the case. And even if they're like, if I'm like, that guy doesn't have a plasma pistol, but he's like, well, it's on the stats. I'm like, all right, cool, he's got it stuck in his pants, I guess, that's fine. But it's better if I can at least sort of see it so I can remember. It's just it's a nice thing to do for your opponent, and sometimes for yourself, because sometimes you forget. Like, oh, that guy had a plasma pistol. I totally forgot. He could have fired at that guy over there, but I totally, So that's helpful too. Let me see. Jeweler's saw or razor saw for hobbies is an essential tool if you want to do a lot of conversions, and green stuff is your friend. Oh yeah, no, green stuff is a big benefit. I wish I was better at it. I need to practice more to get better at it. That's how that gets handled. But yeah, there are people who are just like really good at it from the word go. I'm not, which is why I need practice. So there's that. Let's see here. Some people talk about putting weights on your bases. I have glued nickels to the underside of bases if there's enough space underneath there. If I've got like a model that's top heavy and tips over a lot because it's real tall or whatever, or it's got like a wig, I don't know. I have in the past glued nickels underneath my bases because they cost about 5 cents. So that works out pretty well. Oops. I don't have a question. Just thank you for existing. Well, thanks for. I appreciate it. I'm gonna keep on trying to do it. Devin Jones says P90 got to shoot one in Vegas. Really weird gun. It looks like a weird gun. Yeah, I can see that. I've lost count of how many drill bits I have destroyed working with lead. It's why I try to avoid straight lead models. Yet I still have hundreds. Yeah, that's the hard part about metal models. I think harder to convert because they're just harder to cut. I mean, because they're harder material. What else have we got? Hey, Emily, how are we doing? Oh, Emily says, I've also shot a P90, mostly because it was the gun in Stargate. Oh, nice. There you go. I think I shot a shotgun once. Or, well, more than once, maybe. I mean, like, it was at one time. But it was more than one bullet, or whatever. And I think I've shot a 22. Well, and a BB gun, I guess. But, yeah. How do I know if the model is made of lead? Most models these days that are metal are not made of lead because lead is dangerous. Like, I guess technically poisonous. Like back in the day in the Romans, they would drink out of like lead tankards and then they would go crazy. And so that's bad. We don't do that anymore. You can still buy some models made of lead. The only place I've seen them have been... I think Reaper has a special line, and I forget what they call it, but it is technically made of lead, and the packaging is covered in, warnings about don't lick this and stuff like that. Most metal models these days are made of pewter, which is an alloy of tin and something else. I don't know. I forget what else. But so, yeah, generally these days, if you find a newer model, it will not be made of lead. It's going to be hard to see. I have this little... My neighbor across the street gave me this little modeled. He's got a little horn. I'm gonna put him over Nick's face there. He's like doo doo doo. He's like a little horn blower kind of guy. He's got a little tiny bass there. I don't know where he got him from, but this is like back in the day when you used to make your own miniatures. You would buy the molds and then you'd pour them on your stove, and you would melt down lead because you can melt lead on your stove because it's very soft. And so this I'm not gonna lick, but that's probably lead. I should do a photo shoot with that guy and put some cool images of him up on wherever. But yeah, so generally these days metal models are not made of lead; they're made of pewter, so they're more safe as far as making you go crazy and all that jazz. The downside to pewter sometimes is that it can be a bit more brittle. So if you're trying to bend an arm to get it to be in a different position, you want it over here instead of over here. As you're bending pewter, you will hear it sort of crack and pop a little bit, and then you can potentially also go and just knock, and it'll come right off. That pewter material that they also use is also frequently referred to as white metal as well, so that's something too. The Animaster says, I just realized another advantage of plastic. Magnets work better. Pewter is heavier, and magnetized bits will not hold up as well as they do when used with a light plastic bit. Oh, yeah. No, if you're trying to, if you're one of those people that wants to, magnetize arms on because you want to be able to swap off this arm and shoulder pad, let's say if it's a Space Marine, and this gun, and just take that entire arm off and put on a new one with a different gun or whatever, which I've done before where I'm like, this guy's going to carry a power sword, but sometimes I want him to have a power maul. And so you basically end up making making two arms, one holding one weapon, one holding the other, and then they have I've seen people who will have like just the one shoulder pad, and that'll be magnetized. You take that off, you take the arm off, you put the new arm back on, magnetize back on the shoulder pad. I've seen people do it at the wrists, where you keep all this stuff here and you just take off the hand and the weapon with it, and you put down a different hand, whatever. That is hard to do with metal because the material itself is heavier, and so it's difficult for the magnets to hold the material up or whatever. So light plastic is much easier for magnetizing, just straight up. That's a good point. Bennett asks, have you ever used oil wash? I haven't. I've been predominantly regular user of like GW washes, which I'm pretty sure are acrylic. Army Painter washes, Vallejo washes. I did just recently buy, I think it's in the basement. Nope. I did just recently buy AK Interactive's Streaking Effects, which are technically enamel washes. And I definitely want to try these on some models. I want to try, and I don't want to use them for what they want to use them for. Like normally this stuff is for, you can kind of see it here in the back, like it's to make it look like rusty stuff running down a wall or whatever like that, and you just kind of merp. Well, what I want to use it for is, I read this article somewhere, read a blog post somewhere about a guy who was like, he'd paint up the miniature relatively simply, straight base coat colors, no highlighting or anything like that, and then airbrush some of that stuff onto the model, let it dry for a while, and then go back and rub it off with like a Q-tip or whatever, and I think some white spirits or something like that, mineral spirits, and I gotta find the article again, and rub it off to get like a real kind of grungy dark look. So I want to try that stuff out too. But yeah, otherwise I've never used oil washes, and this will be my first enamel washes. But generally I stick with normal washes. Let's see here. Any suggestions for an old pewter GW Demon Bloodthirster? No matter what, it won't stay together. What type of glue or epoxy would you suggest? A lot of people are telling you to pin it. What that means is that you drill a hole, like in a spot where like two parts are supposed to go together, and then you put you cut like a little piece of wire or paper clip or something like that. You put some glue, and stick it in there, and then you try to go put the model together. This is what a lot of people do, is then they will take like a paint marker or even a Sharpie and get it real wet on the tip, and then touch it to where it's going to go on the other side, like when the piece goes together. And now you've got a dot there, and you drill a hole in there, and now when you put the model together, you put some glue in there, and what you're now doing is you're putting a piece of wire that's between, you know what I mean? Like you've got this piece over here, and here's the pin sticking out of it, and you've got a hole over here, and then when you stick it together, that goes in there, and you're basically, it's almost like rebar in like big cement stuff, except that you're basically I can't think of the word off the top of my head. I don't know. You're making it stronger by having a piece of wire holding things together that way, but it's certainly more fiddly. It's really useful you used to see it a lot in War Machine, because the old metal War Machine models, specifically the metal War Jacks, they wanted to make them very posable, so it was just like where the arm went on, it was just sort of a socket, like a rounded sort of, concave area, and then the arm was just like kind of a ball, but the ball was a good deal smaller than the convex part it would go into, so it's not like it would hold it and like you could get it into place. It just sort of sat there, so it wasn't a ton of contact area, and it was sort of a pain. Now, it gave you a bunch of different posing but then it made it super, like your arms fell off a lot. So people would have to start to pin a lot too. My Sorsha from War Machine, it was like, I think the original metal sculpt, and she had like this scythe weapon she used, and she was holding it kind of behind her or something. And so there was a piece of the handle that was like really tiny, but it would stick up behind her. And so I had to pin that with an incredibly tiny little pin so that it would glue to her back, and it was a pain in the ass, I'm not going to lie. So yeah, that kind of thing is something to do. Pinning is important. Let's see. There are hundreds of adhesives that work with the Bloodthirster. Those stories of them falling apart are due to people not using the correct adhesives. People talking about JB Weld. I've always heard good things about JB Weld. Let's see here. Saloth says, you should do a Sunday show with Sam. I don't know if Sam wants to get up super early on a Sunday. Maybe. But I would like to do something like that. I'm trying to figure out for 2020, especially once I get the new the ATEM Mini thing for the interface between the camera and the computer, and they can take multiple cameras and has a switcher, and it's all super cool. One hope would be to have Sam here, maybe physically, or for us to do it on the internet. If I can figure out the internet thing and all that kind of stuff, which I just need to get the time to sit down. I need to make it a thing that I do. Like I've got a big laundry list, a to-do list of things for the channel and stuff like that. I just need to make sure I put it on there so it's a thing I try to check off. But I would like to figure that out. So not only just have people on live that could actually come here on a Sunday, like Sam could, because he only lives about a half hour away. It'd also be really interesting to have people on the show from far away. Maybe have Vince on the show. Maybe have maybe get moderator Matt on the show for fun. But yeah, that kind of thing. What I do is drill one side and then put a thin layer of poster tack and position it how I want. Then you can pull it apart and there will be a lump, and then you drill where the lump is. Yeah, I've seen that too, I think. Like you basically, because then you push the thing together and then you know where the hole would be. Yeah, there's a lot of different tricks for trying to figure out, once you've got the thing that you're trying to attach to the main body, once you've got the pin in there, then how do you get the hole to line up on the other side so that you can slide the pin and the glue together and then have everything hold it all together. Reinforcement is the word I was looking for before. Now I just come to think of it. Yes, there you go. Wub says, I got 2mm steel rod for pinning. Wow, I just used paper clips. I just went out and found some I've got some thick ones and some thin ones, and they work out pretty well for me. Another method I have used for my metal lictor is I've used green stuff in the sockets with pin and super glue. I've done some of that too. You can, if you don't think that just super glue alone is going to do the job, you can also throw some green stuff in there and some super glue, and that can help. And if you go green stuff, super glue, and a pin, man, it should be very difficult to pull apart or have fall apart or whatever. I mean, if you still drop an old metal warjack on the ground, it is going to shatter. I mean, there's going to be parts everywhere. That's just the way it works. But even if you've pinned it, if you've pinned it like crazy, you might not have it break apart. But it will probably bend in parts you didn't want it to. So there's that. Let's see here. David Moffat says, you should have David Moffat on the show. He's a great guy. Huh, well, there you go. What else? Yeah, like I said, I've got to figure out the tech stuff. I use XSplit. XSplit will work with Skype directly, sort of, but Skype is just hot garbage, and I hate it. I'm trying to figure out a better way to use Discord, honestly, because I've had some luck with that myself, being interviewed via Discord and then being able to take the Discord window and then put a little, just the video part of it, like somewhere like up here, and then then you could see the person or whatever. That way would work out well. Or have them be the big picture, have me be the little picture. That'd be fun too. But trying to figure that out, make it work right. That's the trick right now. Fin Thick One says, hey, just found your channel this week and your videos have helped with my painting. Thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that it's worked. Someone says, some people use Zoom, I think. Zoom with an X. I'll have to look that one up. Zoom. Yeah, it's something I want to look into and try to figure out and go from there. I did a bunch of heavy gear minis, and each one required at least 6 to 8 pins to be secure, a lot of drilling. Oh, I forgot about the old heavy gear minis, yeah. I had a friend who was heavy into that. Like, he bought a bunch of them, but he never built, like, a ton of them particularly. But I did see them at, like, shows. I tried to play a game of the new Heavy Gear Blitz at RockCon, I think, in northern Illinois, probably 5-6 years ago. And unfortunately, the GM was kind of a jerk, and that was problematic, and I really didn't have a fun time. The models look cool, but yeah, they were all still metal back then, and they were small, and so there was a lot of fiddly drilling, I'll bet. Oh, no, it's Zoom with a Z, not Zoom with an X. All right, well, I'll have to take a look at that. Zoom. I'm going to take a picture with my phone so I remember the thing about Zoom. There we go, Zoom. All right, so what else? VJ Morph says it's time to return to his slumber. Well, it's like the other. It's tomorrow or over there already today or whatever. Yeah, it's here in the future. And here in my neck of the woods, it's 11 a.m. So I've got to go and I've got to go do some stuff for my mom and take the other wheelchair over to because she's moving to the new place and she can't take the wheelchair with her and it's a whole thing. So I got to load that in the car. But again, I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out today. And I'm going to try to go through, like I said, this chat area and try to make a list based off of what people have said in here about companies that they like to buy conversion bits from. So if you're watching this in the future, but not too far in the future, because I may have already made the video by then. But if you're watching it like within the next week or whatever after it goes live, definitely in the comments below, put the names of some groups that you like to buy bits from, and things like that. And then I should be able to use that in a future video because I want to make a future video about conversions and have a good list, potentially like even in the description of the video saying, here's a bunch of places you should go and take a look at in no particular order. So anyway, I want to appreciate you folks for doing that. And the next episode will be, I think, post-Christmas. So if you're into that whole thing, I hope that you have a good one. Christmas? Yes, the next one's the 29th. So before New Year's, but after Christmas. So for those of you who did Christmas, have a good one. And if you don't, also have a good one of those. I'll be not going anywhere specifically. It's mostly here in town is where the family is, so that's good. But yeah, we'll see you after that. And I hope that you have a good 2 weeks. And thanks for coming and hanging out and giving me some good ideas for some conversion folks. And thanks for watching.